Welcome all. So today we'll be talking of smart village and the concept and requirement of smart village. So we'll focus on what smart villages are and why do we need smart villages. So let's start with Mahatma Gandhi's mission of a model village and his vision of an ideal village in his words was defined as something as follows. Now, why we are looking at Mahatma Gandhi's vision to start with is because, smart village will draw from something from his model as well, and there has been a lot of efforts over a period of time after India's independence on developing model villages and defining the concept of model villages. And when we are talking of villages, we have to look at locally in our country, in our context, what all developments have happened with respect to model village development, right. So, we will draw from model village and we will create what a smart village should be. So, when we talk of Mahatma Gandhi's vision of a model village, he said that an ideal village will be so constructed as to lend itself perfect sanitation. It will have cottages with sufficient light and ventilation, built of a material obtainable within a radius of 5 miles from it. The lanes and streets will be free from all avoidable dust. It will have wells according to its needs and accessible to all. It will have houses for worship for all. Also a common meeting place, a village common for grazing its cattle, cooperative dairy, primary and secondary schools in which industrial education will be the central fact, and it will have panchayats for settling disputes. It will also produce its grains, vegetables, fruits and its own khadi. This is roughly my idea of model village, unquote. So, this is something that Mahatma Gandhi talked of, and you can see that it includes all the aspects of sustainable development. It talks of the environment, it talks of sanitation as part of environment, it talks of using local materials and local things for building houses and so on and so forth, local materials more sustainably available nearby. And as part of economic development, it talks of cooperative dairy, primary and production of whatever the village requires on its own, industrial education. As part of social, it talks of access to various kinds of infrastructure for all. So, it talks of access to water, it talks of access to places of worship for all, it talks of common meeting places for all, it talks of education, school, industrial education, health for all. So, in a way it is a very holistic approach of looking at a village, an ideal village or a model village. So, it is more sustainable in the sense that it talks of all the 3 E's which are part of sustainable development, that is economy, environment and equity. So, his main focus areas through this quote, we can see that it is self-sufficiency, inclusive, secular, better quality of life, skill development and as well as efficient governance. So, governance which is there at the grassroots level, which is efficient, is also being talked about. Now, in today's context, if we look at model village, of course, there have been several cases all over the country where state governments have and local people also, community themselves have worked upon developing more model villages which have better sanitation, better infrastructure, better health and education facilities and so on. But if we look at some of the government initiatives, 2 of these are important. First is the Adarsh Gram Yojana, which in English if we translate it is model village development, model village planning rather. The proposed Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana of the central government it aims to involve MPs or the member of parliaments more directly in the development of model villages by adopting a village under this initiative. An MP has the opportunity to directly benefit all sections of a village community in an integrated, efficient and participatory fashion. So, a member of parliament kind of adopts a village and initiates the development process of the village by providing it better infrastructure, better facilities, better services in an integrated, efficient and participatory fashion. So, participatory becomes a very important keyword here, because we are talking of villages, we are talking of going down to the grassroots level. So, participatory development becomes important, and participation also becomes important because, as I again talking of the whole idea of rural development, we can't bring about complete development or all round development in rural areas unless and until we involve all the stakeholders, and especially the stakeholders which are marginalized. So, participatory in that sense becomes very important, and this is something we should draw upon when we are talking of smart villages also. Then the Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana is a rural development program broadly focusing upon the development in the villages, which includes social development, cultural development and motivating people for social mobilization of the village community, and it was launched in 2014. So, social and cultural development also becomes a very important part of Adarsh Gram Yojana. Then we have the Rurban Mission, which has also been renamed as Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Rurban Mission, and it identifies village clusters which have potential for growth. So, it does not focus on a single village, but it identifies village clusters which have potential for growth and have economic drivers and derive locational and competitive advantage. So, basically through Rurban Mission, the government is identifying certain village clusters, but again the core of this village cluster would be a village, an individual village, which will show very high potential of growth. So, hence making a case for concerted policy directives for such clusters. These clusters once developed can be classified as Rurban. Aim to develop such rural areas by provisioning of economic, social and physical infrastructure facilities. So, the aim of this mission is to develop such rural areas by providing these areas, because they have a potential. So, the government is providing these areas better economic, social and physical infrastructure facilities. So, some of these rural clusters are actually performing very well in number of states, and there are different economic activities which has been identified for these clusters based on the potential that they have. So, for example, in Himachal, if there is a rural urban cluster, it might be based on tourism as the potential economic activity. So, for further development of tourism activities, the government kind of brings in social and physical infrastructure facilities, better water, sanitation, roads, connectivity, everything, so that already the village or cluster has potential in tourism, and the government can induce certain physical and social infrastructure which can further promote the development of this cluster and lead to development of the surrounding areas also, which are lying close to the cluster. Now, the objectives of a model village. So, the objectives of a model village, again we need to look at it in context of local or in context of what India requires. When we are talking of smart villages, why India requires model village or a smart village. There are certain things which are unique to India that you may not find when we talk of a European country or a South American country or an American country. the villages that they have. So, we have certain problems, certain factors which are different from them. So, we need to look at how smart village or how model village can contribute or can bring about the solution to those problems in rural areas, right. So, the first objective of developing a model village or a smart village is to prevent distress migration from rural to urban areas. So, there have been very many initiatives by the government to prevent distress migration from rural to urban areas. There was one initiative which is called provision of urban amenities in rural areas. Now, this provision of urban amenities in rural areas actually was, the whole concept was developed to provide those facilities, those infrastructure in rural areas which you find in urban areas. Why do people migrate to urban areas? There are 2-3 factors. First is for better employment opportunities. Second is for better infrastructure, water, sanitation. Third, for better access, to better education and health facilities. So, otherwise if we look at the general environment, it's better in rural areas as compared to urban areas, but there are certain problems, as I said, employment, social infra, physical infrastructure. So, for better provision of these infrastructure in rural areas, by providing better infrastructure in rural areas, the distress migration from rural to urban areas can be avoided. Okay. So, which is a common phenomenon in Indian villages due to lack of opportunities, job opportunities, employment opportunities and facilities that guarantee a decent standard of living. So, the model village or smart village should definitely address this problem of distress migration due to these factors. So, when we are talking of smart villages or model villages, we need to develop better livelihood opportunities in rural areas, and we also need to bring about better physical infrastructure like water, sanitation, roads, etc., and better social infrastructure like schools, colleges, skill development institutes, health facilities and so on. Now, the other objective of a model or a smart village development is to make the village a hub that could attract resources for the development of other villages in its vicinity. So, that village should become so self-sufficient as what Mahatma Gandhi's idea of self-sufficient villages was. That village should become so self-sufficient that it should attract resources and it should have resources and optimally utilize those resources in a way that it develops itself and also the other villages in its vicinity. Then third objective is to provide easier, faster and cheaper access to urban markets for agricultural products and other marketable commodities produced in such villages. So, there should be by developing model villages, we should address these economy related problems also of the rural areas and provide them cheaper access to urban markets for both agricultural as well as non-agriculture produce. So, we have seen earlier in the previous class that rural areas actually are largely dependent on agriculture produce, and agriculture produce has a very short shelf life. Some of the agriculture produce are perishable in nature, even livestock, produced from livestock. So, that needs to be marketed quickly and efficiently to the urban and surrounding markets from the rural areas, so that it can be easily consumed within the period that it is required to be. So, that becomes very important, access, connectivity, that becomes very important for rural areas. And also the next objective is to contribute towards social empowerment by engaging all sections of the community in the task of village development. So, as I said, this is one of the most important things that needs to be looked at when we are talking of smart villages and model villages, that contributes towards social empowerment by engaging all the sections of the community in the task of village development. So, people's participation, because unless and until the marginalized stakeholders do not voice their concerns, how will the government know that the problems that they have needs to be addressed? So, for example, women, men might have different set of problems from women. Accessing water may be more important for women rather than having access road. So, how will the authorities, how will the government get to know? Unless and until you have people's participation. So, social empowerment also becomes very important objective. And finally, to create and sustain a culture of cooperative living for inclusive and rapid development. The basic concept of smart village is to utilize community efforts and strength of people from various streams and integrate it with information technology to provide benefits to the rural community. So, involvement of community, so community efforts and strength of peoples from various backgrounds, and integrate it with IT or information technology to provide benefits to the rural community is what is the basic concept of smart village. So, the people need to be made more aware. What are the problems that they are facing, what are their needs and aspirations need to be brought out, and with the help of information technology, all those problems or all those issues needs to be sorted out, and strategies and proposals need to be brought out to address those problems. According to Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy and thoughts, Smart Village project provides global means to local needs. As I said, India's problems could be different, their needs could be different. So, one needs to go down to the local level and understand what it needs, but then it should it should be sorted out in a way which is most efficient. So, the use of global means to address local needs, and IT or information technology plays a very important role in this. There are certain things which needs to be addressed when we are talking of smart villages, such as making them more socially empowered, making them skilled. There should be no discrimination on any aspect whatsoever, making them more involved in the participatory process so that they can voice their concerns. The methods to solve the problems need to be more methodical and modern, and it should be based on moral values of what was given by Mahatma Gandhi, and but using the most modern methods and techniques. People must be made aware about what needs to be developed in their villages. They should adapt to those newer developments and adjust to those newer fast changing environment in the rural areas, because if we are trying to address certain social lacunas also, there might be certain sections of population in rural areas which may not be very adaptive and adjustive to this changing social environment in the village, but that needs to be brought about through better awareness campaigns, better involvement of people, right. Then there should be a readiness to generate all resources for self-sufficiency and self-governance. So, the local governance should be given importance, and the local panchayats should be financially made more they should try and generate their own resources as far as possible. So, generation of own resources and revenues at the panchayat level, at the village level is very important, and self governance is very important. So, if the panchayats will have their own resources, they can spend it more wisely on the needs, on their own needs and aspirations, rather than going for asking for money to the state government and other sources, getting it from other sources. And of course, IT and technology plays a very important role in smart village development. So, in order to have a vision to accomplish the smart village status, the community individually and collectively shall be empowered to take smart decisions using smart technologies and with the support of smart manpower, and by managing to be self-sufficient. Now, why do we need smart villages? At present, one of the major challenges, as I said, in India is growing population and rapid urbanization, which is unavoidable due to aspirations of people. So, this needs to be suitably managed through a balance between rural and urban quality of life, and this will reduce the rural urban migration. So, we require smart villages to stop this rural urban migration by giving people better opportunities and facilities in the rural areas itself, so that they do not need to go out. And in that sense, we would also conserve some of our agricultural lands, which is undergoing so much of transformation and becoming more and more urbanized. To bring about long-term social, economic, environmental welfare action for village community, which will make them capable and empower enhanced involvement in local governance processes, encourage entrepreneurship and build more lively communities. So, by bringing about more social, economic and environmental welfare action for the village community, they will become more empowered with respect to economy as well as local governance processes, and this would lead to better entrepreneurship and bring about more lively communities which are more self-sufficient. So, to develop self-sufficient system of villages, where the villages are more self-sufficient, they have their own economy to fall back upon, they have their own local governance system which provides them with all the resources that they need to bring about better services, facilities, infrastructure. This will create a kind of a self-sufficient system of villages, which should be brought about by a smart village development. To ensure good education, better infrastructure, proper sanitation facility, health facility, waste management, renewable energy, environment protection, clean drinking water, resource use efficiency. So, balance in development of rural and urban area is very important. All these factors, when we talk of smart cities, we are talking of all these things, but these need to be transferred to the rural areas also. Rural areas also need to have access to good education, better infrastructure, proper sanitation facilities, health facilities, waste management, even renewable energy, environment protection. In rural areas, people seldom talk of environment protection, clean drinking water and resource use efficiency. By resource use efficiency, we also need to look at, through resource use efficiency, land as a resource, water as a resource, because agriculture is one of the mainstays in rural areas, and it has a lot of dependence on natural resources. So, how judiciously are we using natural resources? This also needs to be taken care of when we talk of smart villages, because a lot of rural areas are now using so much of fertilizers, pesticides, chemicals, and that is resulting in unsustainable outcomes for these rural areas. Punjab being one of the very important case studies that a lot of scholars and academicians are now working on. So, do we want that kind of a smart development which is not environmentally sustainable? No, we don't. We need more environmentally sustainable smart villages where you are using your resources in a more judicious manner, right. Smart village can achieve smart infrastructure, smart service delivery, smart technology and innovation, smart institutions along with optimal mobilization and utilization of available resources, leading to faster and more inclusive growth. So, through all these developments, we can bring about more inclusive growth, and you are bringing in all the communities, all the people to benefit from the development that is happening in rural areas through smart village development. A smart village will encompass a sustainable and inclusive development of all sections of the village community as they enjoy a high standard of living. Thus, there is an urgent need for designing and developing smart villages which are independent in providing the services, employment and yet well connected to the rest of the world, right. So, they are self-sufficient, they have better job opportunities, everything is there in the rural areas through development of these smart villages, but still they are very well connected to the rest of the world and they are ready to take advantage of the global developments also, right. These are some of the requirements of the smart villages listed out under 5 heads. Physical well-being, which includes better sanitation, better solid liquid waste management, safe drinking water, affordable medical facilities, efficient and affordable education facilities, efficient transport system. So, all this would lead to physical well-being in smart villages. Social well-being can be ensured through women empowerment, uplift the marginalized sections such as women, children, old age, marginal, small farmers and certain communities. Environmental well-being by use of renewable energy, energy conservation, rainwater harvesting. Also, one can add to it judicious use of natural resources, use of organic ways of cultivation in rural areas, use of those irrigation methods which conserve water, use of lesser chemical fertilizers and pesticides, So, all these would contribute to environmental well-being in smart villages. Then economic or financial well-being through functional and accessible bank accounts or a credit system. To this, we can also add that there should be a easy system of credit access and insurance access also, because with climate change and with more and more intensification and more frequency of climate related disasters, the rural areas are facing problems because they are losing their crops more often. So, a good access and a simplified access to credit system and access to insurance in case they lose their agriculture produce, that is important. Infrastructure relating to agriculture such as seed bank, cold storage, etc. Development of efficient and labor intensive non-farm sector. Non-farm sector is very important. So, in rural areas we need diversification within agriculture itself by diversifying to newer crops which are more which will add more value, such as certain horticulture crops or floriculture and so on, and diversification towards non-farm sector also to certain extent, because then even if there is crop loss or there is failure of crop, the farmers have something to fall back upon. So, this is very important. Diversification, that is very important when we are talking of economic well-being. Skill mapping and vocational training, again very important. What skills do they have? Mapping those skills and giving them vocational training. And finally, institutional well-being through grievance redressal, strengthening of community-based organizations, e-governance, smart security, and digital platform plays a very important role for all these requirements of smart village. So, digital platform for enhanced efficiency. Benefits of smart villages are as follows: locally produced, locally consumed energy and products in villages, creation of job opportunities, contribution to global environment, new technologies, inclusive development, so on and so forth. We also need to look at smart village development from the lens of sustainable development goals. It is very important. So, in 2015, more than 190 countries acting within the framework of the UN pledged to meet 17 sustainable development goals or SDGs to ensure global economic and social development and preserve the environment. Rural sustainability and the smartness of rural development is inevitably an important part of this activity, aimed at supporting the above mentioned goals. The figure below shows a list of 17 SDGs for solving the present complex social, political, economic and environmental challenges for citizens, business, institutions and governments. So, smart village development would also require us to look at all these sustainable development goals. How can we bring about no poverty situation in rural areas, zero hunger in rural areas, good health and well-being in rural areas, quality education and gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable energy, better housing, all these. So, all these sustainable development goals should get integrated with smart village development is what is required for coming generations. In the end, I would just like to briefly talk of the smart village concept as it got initiated, and Europe was one of the pioneers which talked of smart village concept way back. So, the idea of smart village in Europe is consistent with the goal and recommendations which were listed in the 1996 Cork Declaration, which was this declaration came as part of the European Conference on Rural Development, and part of this, the concept of smart cities is oriented towards saving resources, appropriate spatial planning, transport management, reduction of costs resulting from urban sprawl, and extensive use of innovation related mainly to technology and digitization. So, this also very clearly summarizes that there is again requirement of sustainable outcomes if we want to develop smart cities. And this has been extended to smart villages as well. So, the use of information and digital technologies to create interactive and efficiency of urban settlements, new investment in human and social capital, communication infrastructure, efficient use of resources, extending participation of citizens in development programs. So, the idea of bottom up development of local systems in rural areas may create village smartness by the extensive use of locally specific assets, including tacit knowledge of communities affected by development pressures. So, all these are the 2 points where they are talking of smart cities, and these can be extended to rural areas when we are talking of bottom up approach, and that is what the Cork Declaration brought about. The elements of smart city model such as environment, people, quality of life, management, mobility, economy, research and innovation have quickly been transferred to the sphere of regional development and recently also to the rural sustainable development programming. So, this is what the whole idea of smart village concept as Europe looked at. Here in case of India, certain things are similar to what this whole idea of smart city model being transferred to rural areas is concerned. So certain things are similar, but there are certain things which we need to look at from a global lens, from a local lens, and apply it globally. There are certain challenges when we try to develop smart villages. We need to sort these out, such as social inclusion and support, ensuring skill based job opportunities, better marketing and prices for agriculture produce, better sanitation facilities in the villages, better social and physical infrastructure, providing sufficient income, job opportunities, efficient institutional mechanisms. So these are requirements as well as challenges. We have to provide these, but these need to be provided in all the smart villages is also a big challenge given the size and extent of our country. These are some of the steps taken by government for rural development in last few years. These are some of the innovative ways that the government has worked towards rural development, such as Garib Kalyan Rozgar Yojana, which was launched, which is to be launched in 116 districts, and there are 25 works which are to be identified, skill mapping of workers to be done, and accordingly they are to be given jobs, viability gap funding for creating agriculture infrastructure. That is very important because private sector does not want to invest in rural areas. So viability gap funding for creating agriculture infrastructure is something that the government is looking at, and there is the digital development that is actually favoring the cultivators. Now they can sell their products in any part of the country, but there is also a digital divide if we see when we compare urban and rural areas, and this digital divide needs to be broken down. This is one of the case studies of a model village, Hivare Bazar, and it is located in the rain shadow region of Sahyadri mountains in Maharashtra, and farming in the village was largely rain fed. Farmers were forced to migrate seasonally to surrounding areas for work, but the community themselves initiated development, and from 1990s onwards things began to change. Village Panchayat adopted a holistic focus on a variety of activities with community groups responsible for various aspects of the village economy and social development. Women thrift groups, milk dairy society, youth clubs are example of such community based organizations that were initiated here in Hivare Bazar. And the village panchayats also focused on family planning, reforestation, for which awareness programs and drives were frequently organized in the villages. And the village Gram Sabha also launched a watershed development program and an annual water audit being conducted in the village since 2004 for more efficient and equitable management of water resources. So all this has contributed to better agriculture productivity, better social outcomes, environmental outcomes, and economy as well. Thank you.